Hello and welcome to today's webinar on understanding how optimized connectivity improves return on investment, or ROI, in the Internet of Things. My name is Jeremy Cowan. I'm editorial director and co-founder of IoT Now, and I'm your moderator today. I want to thank the hundreds of you who are joining us live today around the world. We've got a very interesting discussion for you, brought to you by Sierra Wireless with independent analysis from Analysys Mason. And we have a lot of expertise to call on. First, I'd like to introduce Michelle McKenzie, who is Principal Analyst at Analysys Mason, as she'll be our first speaker in a minute. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Jeremy. Hello, everybody.
Great to have you. And next, let me welcome Dan Mortensen, Vice President of Cloud and Connectivity Business Line at Sierra Wireless. It's good to have you here, Dan.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's nice to be here, and hello, everybody.
Well, today we're discussing how the Internet of Things, or IoT for short, will transform your business by providing business insight, improving business process, and connecting you to your customers. But the question remains, how do you truly measure your IoT connectivity initiatives? We aim to answer that, and this webinar is being recorded, so you can access it in 48 hours or less via iotnow.com. Before we start, I just want to remind you that this is a truly interactive webinar. We really want to know what you think, so we'll start in a moment with the first of two live polls, and we'll see the results immediately. At the end of the speakers' presentations, I will put your questions to our panel for them to answer live. So starting right now, you can send me your questions for our speakers, and you can carry on doing that at any time during the webinar. Just click on the questions button and type them into the window. I will put as many questions to our speakers as time allows, and of course any that we don't get to, I will pass on to our speakers so that they can respond offline. So send me your questions now. And of course, if you're having any technical issues with audio or slides, you can also use the question window to get advice from our technical support team. Well, the first poll question is this: at what stage is your IoT deployment? Now, I want everyone, if you can, please to take part, because it's very interesting to know exactly what stage you're at. We can't see individually how you answer, so it's completely confidential. The answers are A, I'm already using connected devices. B, I already have an IoT project underway. C, I plan to start an IoT project in the next 12 months. And D, I'm just doing research at this stage and I'm not sure about an IoT project. So at what stage is your IoT deployment? Well, I hope that gives people enough time to think about that from their own perspective and to give us their honest answers. Let's have a look and see what replies we've had so far. Well, a majority are doing research and not yet sure about the IoT project that they may or may not undertake at nearly 31%. Pretty close behind it, I'm looking at I am already using connected devices at 28% almost. At 23%, I already have an IoT project underway. And 18%, I plan to start an IoT project in the next 12 months. Well, I'm sure everyone has given us their views by now. What's your thoughts on that, Michelle? Does that tally with what you expected?
I think if I'm honest, the number of the audience who are already using connected devices or have an IoT project underway is perhaps slightly higher than what we've been seeing. But then, we have to take into account the sort of audience we probably have online today.
True enough. Dan, how about you? Is that in line with your expectations?
I think it's interesting that we have about 50% either doing it already today or have a product underway. It would be extremely interesting to see how applicable the return on investment discussions we're going to have today are for them. It would be great to understand.
Well, as you say, it's going to be very interesting to understand, and certainly this is two-way traffic. That's what I love about these webinars. In this one-hour webinar, we obviously want to discuss optimizing connectivity for IoT programs. It's clearly time to hear more from the first of our panel, Michelle from Analysys Mason. So during her presentation, we will break at a later point to have our second poll, and then Michelle will conclude before handing over to Dan from Sierra Wireless. Michelle, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jeremy. So, hello everybody. As we said, my name's Michelle Mackenzie and I'm an analyst working for Analysys Mason on the IoT and M2M Solutions program. And I'm going to introduce the topic and set the scene for today's webinar on how optimized connectivity improves the return on investment for the IoT. And I'll be outlining some of the key drivers of growth in the IoT and the role of connectivity services in underpinning the business case for the IoT. But first, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about Analysys Mason. So if you're not already aware, we're a telecoms research and consulting firm. We have a global presence. We have deep industry expertise in several key topic areas, such as regulation and business modeling. And our research expertise is gained not just through research interviews, but also from consulting projects for clients. And we provide consulting and advisory services and actionable market intelligence for a whole host of players. Now, I work on the IoT and M2M Solutions program, and I just want to highlight a couple of the reports that we are doing this year. We'll be producing a series of case studies on the ROI for the IoT, and we'll be looking at some specific vertical sectors, including fleet and manufacturing, etc. And we'll also be updating our forecasts, which now cover over 70 country markets as well as 8 verticals. And this just gives you an idea of some of the custom research projects that we have in the area of IoT. We've covered areas such as regulation, go-to-market strategy, and identifying the verticals which offer the most opportunities. So to move on with the presentation. So what exactly is the IoT? The IoT, of course, is about transforming dumb products into smart connected products. Where once we had pure mechanical products and machines, at some point in time, electronics, microprocessors and embedded systems were added to improve functionality and make those devices more flexible. And once you have an embedded system in place, the next logical step is to add a networking capability. But what's new? Many people say, including colleagues and clients, they ask me what's new about IoT. Haven't machines been talking to each other for decades already? And this is true. SCADA systems are commonplace in manufacturing and power plants and have been for years. But I think what's really new is the availability of ubiquitous wireless networks and also the scale of what's going on. And of course, wireless networks are a key driver. Connectivity is the fundamental enabling factor of the IoT. And scale is driven by declining costs on the technology front. So machine-type communication is now more affordable and accessible, and for use in many different and dynamic ways. Many people talk about the Internet of Things, others talk about the Internet of Everything, so that gives you an idea of just how far the industry is expecting this to go. Now, I'd just like to highlight here some of our forecasts on this market, and here we're really focusing on cellular M2M connectivity. And we're forecasting that connections will grow from 205 million in 2014 to over 1.3 billion in 2025. So that's a growth rate of 19%. And this will be largely driven by connectivity in the automotive and transport sector. And we include in that aftermarket services such as usage-based insurance, which has taken off in some markets and is gaining traction in others. And we also include here fleet management solutions, as well as embedded connectivity in passenger cars. But there are also lots of smaller opportunities where connectivity is critical in supporting new delivery and business models. Let's take healthcare as an example. With the growing pressure on healthcare institutions around the world to deliver more for less, connectivity is a key enabler in delivering some of those new delivery models. And it's a similar story for industrial and retail applications, for example. And of course, all these connected devices will be unmanned. Many will be dispersed, and a large number will be in remote or difficult to reach places. And of course, there are many key enablers and drivers that are coming together that are aligning, if you like, to further IoT adoption. So in terms of enablers, the costs of deploying IoT have come down a great deal. And there's also a great deal more awareness of the benefits that the IoT can bring. In terms of drivers, probably the most cited driver is, that the companies are using IoT to reduce their costs and create efficiencies. And this will continue to be a key driver going forward. One of the more interesting drivers is generating new revenue streams, and we've probably seen fewer initiatives whose principal objective is to generate new revenue. But companies are beginning to look at servitizing their products business, and they're taking the IoT route to do this. So for example, if you take ESAB, a Swedish welding company, they've deployed connectivity to change their business model from product to service so that they can monitor their welding machines and they can set up a pay-per-usage based model. So it's a very different approach. With regard to the return on investment, it is now more widely understood, and there are more proof points in the market for certain verticals such as fleet management. But in other verticals, there's very little information to date on the ROI. It seems to be a very closely guarded secret, and this is partly because it leads to, this enables competitive advantage and a window of opportunity for companies to gain market share. So, as I've said, reducing costs has been a key driver, and let's just take an example here of fleet management. Now, we're predicting 145 million connections by 2025, and for many fleet owners, connectivity will deliver the following benefits. They'll be able to perform remote diagnostics, which will help reduce downtime and schedule services and repairs, and this will result in cost savings from unscheduled downtime, for example. They're also looking to lower fuel consumption and, in some markets, fuel theft. And connectivity obviously enables this and enables better route planning to bring down the fuel costs. Likewise, with monitoring driver behaviour, if you can get your drivers to change their behaviour, then that has a positive impact on reducing fuel wastage. And then there's compliance with regulation, so for example to ensure lone worker safety or comply with driver rest breaks. And as you can see from the quote on this slide, what we're hearing is that it's typically 15 to 20%. That's a typical ROI in the fleet management connectivity market. And we're expecting to see further growth in fleet management, even if it is one of the more relatively mature verticals for the IoT. But the same goes for other sectors. In the aftermarket, telematics solutions for passenger cars, UBI is increasingly being offered to reduce risk and link insurance premiums to driver behaviour. And connectivity is the key ingredient in driving all of this. Now, at this point, I'm going to hand over to Jeremy for our second poll question.
Thanks, Michelle. Yes, as you can see on your screen, we've got our second poll ready for you to answer. And the question is, what is average connectivity spend as a percentage of IoT project spend? Is it less than 5%? Is it 5 to 30%? 30 to 60%? Or do you believe it's greater than 60%? So in your experience, what is average connectivity spend as a percentage of IoT project spend? I'm hoping that gives people enough time to answer. It should do. Let's have a look at the results we've got so far. Wow, that's pretty comprehensive. 68% of respondents reckon that it's 5 to 30%. Almost 20% find that it's less than 5%, and 12% feel that it's 30 to 60%, and nobody said it was greater than 60. Can I ask you first, Dan, what's your take on that response?
I think it's well aligned with the expectations I had in the area of 5 to 30%. I think it's been decreasing for the last couple of years. And it's also very depending on the use case. If you do telematics, low usage, and you still need a device in the car and so on, it's probably a smaller percentage versus if you do some high volume broadband use cases such as streaming audio, video, or those kind of areas. So I think it's very, very depending on the use cases.
And isn't it true that spend is often significantly underestimated in an IoT project, Dan?
Yeah, I think it's a good point. And it's probably true. If you just look on the dedicated price you pay to your carrier, I think it's underestimated, yes, definitely.
Michelle, do you go along with all of that? Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, and as you'll see in my next slide, we're very much aligned with this view as well.
Excellent. Well, it seems an appropriate moment for me to move to the next slide so that we can hand straight back to you.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Okay, so moving on, and based on our poll question, our research and analysis on the value chain illustrates that connectivity can comprise between 5 and 30% of spend on an IoT solution. And this is quite a broad range. As Dan's just mentioned, the wide range in many ways reflects the range of different types of solution that cellular IoT is being deployed for. So for some applications, data or traffic volumes are relatively high, for example, in automotive or financial services. But in other markets, cellular can represent a very low share of total spend, maybe where it's used as a backup solution for a fixed line security solution, for example. What is true is that the value of an IoT solution is often perceived to be higher up the stack in the application or services layer, and connectivity is often perceived as being commoditized. It's often, underestimated. But connectivity is about far more than the price per megabyte, as we will go on to discuss later in this presentation. And also, there's often a greater cost at stake if A, the connectivity is not in place in the first place, or B, if the connectivity fails. So for example, for the connected car, relative to the cost of the car, connectivity is quite small. But if a small software upgrade is needed that can be done over the air, then it saves the potentially large cost of having to recall cars back to a dealer. So connectivity also needs to be looked at relative to the costs that are avoided, or the opportunity cost. So moving on, let's take a look at an example where the connectivity fails. So last year, February 2015, the Irish lottery suffered a connectivity outage which affected 3,500 lottery terminals. And it resulted in the lottery having to be postponed for 24 hours. So customers had to wait a little longer to see if they'd win that €10 million jackpot. And it wasn't clear in terms of the financial cost what impact, if any, it had on the lottery company. But it did create a lot of negative publicity for the lottery, with lots of questions being asked in the press. And naturally, most enterprises would wish to avoid this sort of scenario. So we've established that many enterprises have identified their main objectives for deploying IoT, reducing costs, increasing operational efficiency and new business models. But in order to achieve this, they need to focus on the foundations, i.e. the connectivity. So first of all, ensuring that you have the right SIM for the job is important. Many enterprises believe or have believed in the past that a standard mobile broadband SIM will support the solution. And of course, these SIMs are designed for smartphones, and if they fail, the user is able to contact a call center for advice. But that's obviously not an option for a SIM in an unmanned machine, sometimes located in remote places. And unlike mobile broadband SIMs, M2M SIMs often need to be ruggedized and built to withstand extreme conditions. So having the right SIM is important. And also having the right connectivity solution. So you need a robust solution. Enterprises need to take into account network coverage. That includes geographic coverage as well as density in urban areas where the risk of congestion is higher. In addition, many applications are business critical, so they need a high quality connectivity. Malfunctioning SIMs could result in downtime, and that incurs extra costs. IoT connections need to be managed remotely to ensure they're functioning correctly, and it should be easy to identify which connections are down or malfunctioning. And some malfunctioning connections can also produce erratic traffic profiles. And as data is the crux of the IoT solution, it's critical to ensure that the data transmitted is reliable and can be traced back to the device that transmitted it. And then there's the issue of scalability. So there needs to be a future vision of how a successful IoT deployment may evolve. If the right connectivity and the right sort of connectivity management solution is not in place, it becomes a lot more difficult to scale and add further SIMs at a later date. So just to summarize and recap before I hand over to Dan, as we said earlier in the presentation, the key objective is often to reduce costs. But the ROI could be severely undermined if the connectivity solution is unreliable, and this could result in additional costs or truck rolls at a later date. Likewise, if the objective was to develop a new revenue stream, connectivity failure could result in the failure of the new business model, and the accurate data that is required in order to run that business model. And so here, companies should really think about what sort of revenue loss they may incur or what sort of customer service issues they may incur if the connectivity is not robust enough. And we've spoken a little bit already about scaling the business, but obviously the connectivity solution needs to be future-proof. And let's not underestimate the last point on trust and brand. As we have seen from the example on the Irish Lotto, connectivity failure can result in a great deal of negative publicity, and this in some cases could severely undermine customer trust. So at this point I'd like to hand over to Dan of Sierra Wireless, who will look at the connectivity ROI in more detail.
Thank you, Michelle. Extremely interesting view that you have, and I share a lot of it. So I'm Dan Mortensen. I'm heading up the cloud and connectivity business line within Sierra Wireless. It's a new business line, approximately 2 years old. I will come back to that. Who are Sierra Wireless? Let's start there. So it's a global company, about 1,000 people across the world, customers in, well, every bush almost, but really global spread. Growing company, 600 million last year, growing 25% year by year. Where we are coming from the device side of things. So we are coming from the module side of things and gateway side of things. And that IoT ecosystem, we're now expanding, moving into helping our customer bridge the gap of how to build IoT solutions. So this is the mission of Sierra, building the IoT. And like I said, we're coming from the module side, so our AirPrime proposition for connecting your devices to internet or to your backend, and our gateway solution and networking solution as a ruggedized gateway. And then we have our cloud proposition. So we have a cloud service platform where our customer can manage their devices, manage their connectivity. It can collect the data from the devices and feed to your downstream system. So this has been Sierra for a couple of years. But it's not really simplifying for our customers because there's missing a gap in the middle. And since about 2 years ago, we started to close this gap with adding SIM and connectivity capabilities. And today we're going to obviously focus on the connectivity side being the biggest portion of the value chain, or about 30%. We're coming back to that. So where are we today? And our customers, they're really everywhere, not just global. They're really in every single vertical. We got customers, large, small, in automotive to residential business, and in all use cases. So we got a good flavor of how should I say, the full world of IoT as such. But coming back to the SIM and connectivity and zooming in a little bit on that. So like I said, this is a business approximately 2 years old. Are we new in business? No, not really. It's through a couple of organical growth initiatives as well as a couple of acquisitions. So today we sit on approximately 1,000 plus customers, globally spread, and about 2 million subscribers. And the same goes here. We got large customers, OEMs, to small and medium-sized customers. And we're going to look into some of them today and why did they work with us from a connectivity standpoint and what helped them, right? So Veolia, you might know, it's a customer that is doing water purifiers for healthcare and medical labs and those kind of stuff that really want to connect their device across Europe for really mission critical data. Nubi is a startup in Mexico. So they are connecting the gas tanks in Mexico, and we're going to touch a little bit more deeper on this. But basically, it's spread across the Mexican geography, so both urban, rural, in the middle of nowhere, and then has an interesting approach. And the last one, Norsley, is doing security applications for access control, very, very deep indoors. So poor coverage, usually from the connectivity side. So 3 different type of customers with 3 different type of challenges. Everything from really having mission critical data flow to be able to grow quickly, as in Nubi cases, and to be able to have a high quality SLA and services on the security side of things. So what is typically the issues that the company gets stuck with when they are moving into the phase of IoT and the, how should I say, the connectivity? First of all, high level. So first of all, a lot of IoT products we see out there doesn't really look into the overall ROI. It doesn't look into that they actually get the bang of the buck back to them. They have a lot of great initiatives, but in the end, they don't compute that they actually get something back from the investment. I see this so often. It's technology driven. The initiatives are technology driven, and it's not business driven. And it's end up after a couple of years saying, why are we doing this? We're connecting all these devices, but we don't make sense of the data. We don't use it. And it turns out that they're leaving it. And often this comes down to, it's a challenge to transform into the service business. To move from a product business to service business is very much a big effort. And also, as I touch upon, focus must be on the business value of the data. So the data is really crucial here. If you don't get the data, it's extremely hard to do something with it, and it's extremely hard to transform your business. So moving from selling products to services. And like I said, technology, they often drive it from, but still a lot of the customers out there underestimating the technology complexity of an IoT device. So let's zoom in a little bit more on what should they look like when they're evaluating objectives for a return on investment, moving into the connectivity field of IoT. So there's a couple of areas where we believe it makes sense to focus. First, reducing cost, right? So reduce the service cost in general. And this is everything from connectivity to cloud platforms, to the back-end platforms, making sure that those costs are really optimized. The second one is to make sure that they have a solution where the customer downtime is really minimized. And I'm going to come back on that and touch this a little bit more granularity, what I mean. And make sure that they minimize the time to repair. So if there is an issue, they need to go in the field to fix it. Make sure that it's really small. So these are areas to be reduced. And we're going to guide how can that be done. So, and then on top of that, obviously, a lot of companies move into the IoT with this vision of potentially increasing revenue. So transform from a product to service company, increase their service revenue, increase the valuation of the company, attract and acquire new customers is a big area of that. And obviously increase service efficiency. So optimize the on-site team, the field technical team, and those kind of areas of a typical product company, and get a closer relation with the end customer. So making sure that the customer is happy and is satisfied with the products they're buying from a product company. So as a part of this, we have the connectivity. And we talked about this before. It's in the 5 to 30% of the total stack is related to connectivity. And just like Michelle mentioned, it's not just about the megabyte price. There's a lot of hidden cost in connectivity that can, in some use cases and some example, easily double the cost of connectivity. Because when it comes down, the real cost you're paying for your megabyte or for your service that you get from your carrier is really what you pay to them, so network communication cost, plus all the cost around it. Support cost to your customer when it doesn't work, and downtime cost, and then all of the other stuff that Michelle mentioned. You get an impact of your brand, you get a losing trustworthiness, and so on and so forth as a part of your proposition as the company are transforming into the service business. So looking into the network side of this, so what do we typically pay on a connectivity approach today to the carriers and to the MNOs? Well, there's a multiple areas that we pay typically. There's a monthly fee. There's a subscription fee for the SIM. And this subscription fee is not always in favor, especially if you are on a use case that has periods where you don't use your connectivity, where it actually are on the shelf as a part of the logistical process before it goes in the field. But you need to build the connectivity as a part of the production line, test it, that it makes sure, and then it goes into logistical process for a couple of months, and you're still paying the subscription fee. Number two are use cases where you have devices that are active for a couple of weeks, months, and then they're inactive for weeks, months. Typically shipping. The big containers across the globe that are active when they're on a ship, when they enter the harbor, but when they're not used, they might be inactive for months. So it's crucial that the subscription fee can really adapt to your need as your use cases. The other part there is the data you're using, the data, the SMS, the voice, the CSD, all the services you're using around it, right? That needs to be optimized. It could be a pay-per-use model, depending on your pattern, if it is low usage or fluctuating, or it could be a fixed price, all you can eat, or a fixed price for different bundles. And then you have the overage. So if you have a bundle and you're using data above it or services above it, you're going to be charged for that. So how to balance that? What if a device goes, should I say, corrupt and start to spam data? That will not be part of the bundle. It will be a part of the overage and might be pretty expensive. And last, roaming. So a lot of customers that move into IoT, they ship devices, they ship their units, their products across the globe. And it's really a pain from both a commercial aspect when you go into roaming, as well as a quality aspect, as well as a management aspect of the connectivity side. So there's a different type of examples of the cost components there. So what does IDC, so it's an International Data Corporation, that is a global provider of market intelligence about how to minimize usage cost of the connectivity. They say that you should try to find a network where you can switch between high usage and low usage, so a panel from 2G to 4G in the same network, in different networks to optimize it. Make sure that you have all your devices in a data plane that is flexible to support both high usage and low usage devices. It's pretty basically a lot of carriers, they say if you put more devices on the same data plan, you can get a better megabyte price or whatever it is. And they also recommend make sure that you don't get overage cost because of these mail function devices, which I talked about when they start to spam the network. And make sure you can change your rate plan in the middle of your contract. And why is that important? Because the evolution is here, right? You might launch a product today to do a certain data collection of some sensors, but over the period of that lifetime of that device, that might be 5-10 years, you want to add services, you want to add capability that is utilizing more data or less data. And to be honest, the whole society is moving to real time. So if you lose a product today that is doing measurement collection, I don't know, every 15 minutes, don't be surprised that we're talking close to real time in a couple of years down the road. So connectivity is key, right? We talked about the cost components, but there is actually more to it. There is a cost component when it doesn't work. There's a cost component when the customer are dialing into the technical support of the customers and have a problem where they need help to get that diagnosed, where they need help to have that troubleshooted, and you need to spend time to sort that out with the customer. And in worst case, there is an additional cost, and that is when you actually have to go in the field and fix the device. Make sure the truck goes back into rolling if it is a fleet management solution. Make sure that the car can communicate the way it should for eCall or telematic services. And this is really crucial, and this can cost a lot of money. Personally, I have been involved in a large customer that had to recall 8,000 cars due to malfunction SIM card. So it's crucial that the solution you pick from the SIM card to how it adapts in the network, how it works in the network, is really built for IoT. And downtime cost. So service is not working. That's pretty basic stuff, right? So you might lose revenue. Obviously, we're going to get perceived as providing a poor service, potentially impacting your brand value and your brand preference, and potentially stall the transformation from a product company to service company. And you're going to have to pay penalties. As a part of the SLA where you commit to provide a service in an availability for X days, weeks, months per year, and you miss those targets due to downtime, you might end up paying penalties to your customers. So let's go back to this newbie company, the Mexican company. There's a startup. It's a pretty interesting idea. I just want to snap how we help them get started and how we help them on their connectivity devices. So this is a startup company. It's actually a funny story. The founder of this company has a summer house in Mexico. And when he moved there, he turns out that after a couple of weeks, the stove didn't work any longer. Turns out there's a gas tank on the roof that has no gas. There's no notification. There's no way to see the gas level. And there's no way to call the gas company and say, guys, I need more gas. Can you come by? It doesn't work that way in Mexico. In Mexico, the gas trucks, they're running around a little bit ad hoc, and you need to stop them and say, guys, I need gas. Can you fill it up? And then they do it. And so he saw this business opportunity. Man, we can connect the gas tanks. We can let the user, the consumer, know the gas levels, how much they use. They can put alerts. You should be able to order gas in the application. At the same time, we can go to the gas company and say, dear gas company, you know, with all the consumers having this gas monitoring, you might be able to optimize the route of your fleet. You might be able to get an online payment, and you can see usage of your consumers, so you know when you need to be there again to tap them up and fill up their gas, and you can deep dive into the analytics. That was the whole business idea they come up with. And so we helped them here with a full device-to-cloud proposition. So basically, from the module side, they had a system integrator building the whole device. We plugged in the connectivity that can help them scale in Mexico and North America of a smart SIM. I'm going to come back to that a little bit. And obviously, the platform for data collection. And on top of the platform, Nubia built their end customer applications or gas company application. So to simplify the value chain, to get them quickly to market, get it fully integrated, get end-to-end security, and a solution they can not just do in Mexico, but actually scale globally. So when Nubia did this, what was the challenges related to connectivity? Well, there are 4 pieces. One, they had a technical challenge that was coverage. They knew that they're going to play, the gas tanks are spread in Mexico, some in rural areas, some in nowhere, in the middle of nowhere. And it needs to be coverage wherever the gas meter goes. That was one of the issues they had. And how can they do that? So a big question mark for them, how to fix that. Number 2 was the data quality. So even if there is coverage, there's a lot of downtime of the data services in Mexico and other areas of the data loss. The data session drops, or SMS is not available to send through, but mainly the data session is lost. The SIM is still connected on the network, but it's lost. If you've ever been roaming, traveling, this happens pretty often. Either you get no services, or you just see the 2G, 3G, 4G symbol in your smartphone disappears. And then it comes back a couple of minutes, hours later. A little bit frustrating. And in an IoT deployment, it's a business killer. And then they have a couple of operational challenges. So they wanted a flexibility because the gas meter has a lifetime of about 10 years. And they say, we don't know how our business is going to look in 10 years. We might do stuff local with the carriers. We might do stuff with the end user. We want to have flexibility to change. We might add in new services. We might add in new content there. So flexibility. But it needs to be simple, right? It needs to be simple in a way where we can take the solution we put in place in Mexico and replicate that across the globe to any other area where the problem is pretty much the same. In terms of, we need one SIM, we need to be able to test it in the facilities, we need to be able to ship it everywhere in the world, and we need to be able to either use your Sierra or someone else as a connectivity provider, but it needs to be through one simple logistical chain, one set of tools, one set of management platform where we can manage our SIMs from a day-to-day base. So what option did they have, basically? Basically, they could go and buy a local broadband SIM, just like Michelle mentioned. They can do that. It's probably pretty cheap, but it's not built for IT. We all know that. So both in terms of it's not covering the coverage because it's only one MNO, so it will not help to cover Mexico in this case. The SIM logistic is not built for IoT. They will get one envelope, one SIM. They need to press the card out for every single delivery, every single SIM card. Imagine ordering 2,000 or 200,000 of those and getting a big pile of SIM cards and the letters. And obviously, there's no support for future over-the-air updates like EUICC technology to actually change carrier depending on where the SIM ends up. Another alternative is to go to roaming SIM. So this is typical of what the market is about. So roaming SIM, some are more for IoT, a little bit ruggedized and so on. So this is the traditional proposition, I would say, on the market. So obviously they get more than one MNO, one carrier within the country, so they can do national roaming. And the problem they have there is that the newbie gets a little bit locked in. So either they go with a big carrier like Vodafone, and then they have great pricing within the Vodafone alliances, within the Vodafone group. But if they leave that, pricing skyrockets. The same is going with a player like Jasper Wireless, where they can get a global SIM through one of the Jasper Wireless carriers. Works well as long as you're in the Jasper alliances. If you leave that, problem. And the same goes for support of EUICC and over-the-air updates. Within the alliances, there's an openness for that. But if you leave the alliances, forget it. They're not going to let you swap over there to another operator that is not in the alliances. So this is where we want to close. From our perspective, it's all about simplifying the value chain from the device to the cloud to the backend. We're not saying we don't, for us, it doesn't matter if it is a roaming solution, local solution. We say we want to simplify for our customers. So that's when we put the smart SIM in place. The smart SIM that is a multi-operator SIM, an intelligent multi-operator SIM that is totally built for this. I'm going to come back and touch upon it a little bit more. Built for IoT, utilizing a dedicated IoT network core spanning the globe. So what is this smart SIM all about, right? So basically it's a SIM, like any others, that holds multi-operator profiles on the card. And there is a patented application on the card that makes sure that the SIM card always connect to the best network. And how does it do that? It scans all the network. It makes sure that everything is in there and makes sure that it understands which network is best, where should I go, and then it connects. And it can change through always measure that the SIM can send data or the service that's going to provide. If it's a voice-centric use case, it's going to be on the voice metrics, or if it is a data-centric, it's data metrics. And if it loses the data connection, as an example, the SIM is going to change network automatically. The intelligence on the SIM manages that. There's no need to have a back-end solution to some MNO platform, because when there's no coverage, there's no way for the SIM to communicate backwards to the back-end solution. Say, guys, I need a new network to attach to because I have a problem here. That intelligence needs to be on the SIM. So best coverage and best quality. And then it needs to have most flexibility. And the way we do it is that we have a platform that is really a no lock-in carrier platform. The SIM card is open to use either your existing providers that can be loaded on the SIM, or Sierra Wireless, which has this multi-carrier agreements, or if the customers want to do a local SIM, the SIM can be reprovisioned over the air for EUICC technology to become a local SIM. So it's truly the simplicity to have one SIM for real global rollouts across the globe for IoT. I mentioned this platform and this SIM. So basically, what we help our customers with is the base of a SIM card and the connectivity, like I said, that is also being able to be loaded with third-party profiles through the EUICC, that is also being able to manage third-party SIMs in a single platform. So in the Sierra platform, you can bring your own SIM that you have. You can manage them, or use the Sierra SIM that has these multi-profile capabilities, the intelligent capabilities. You can bring in any barrier service you have. It doesn't need to be cellular. It could be fixed line, could be satellite, could be low power. And in the platform, it's not just subscription management of your SIM card, of the Sierra SIM and third-party SIMs. It's the same platform. You can do your data collection for the device. You can do monitoring of your device, so see the health of the device, see the firmware of the device. You can update the firmware, and you can do billing in the device. So it's a true simplification of the device-to-cloud proposition. So we talked about megabyte price before, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit again. So I'm having an example of a telematics customer that is doing the ROI, high-level ROI of how does an intelligent SIM actually help. So example, as you can see, it's 5 years. It's a low usage, 1 megabyte per SIM per month. The cost is approximately $1, and there's 200,000 SIMs. This is data that we have been collecting from live customers. So this is data we actually know are coming from the field. Obviously, there's no customer name in here. But if you look onto this, we can see that about 4,000 issues that are being filed to the customer can be reduced by 2/3 with the Smart SIM, because they're related to lack of coverage or data resilience or those kind of features. And this impacts the support, as we talked about. So support cost can go down in terms of its lower number of issues, but it's also easier support with a platform where you can deep dive into troubleshooting tools for all your SIMs, independent of the vendor of the SIMs that you have. You can be faster in your turnaround of your support. And obviously, since the SIM is more intelligent on the endpoint, field service, it's being cut. You don't have to go there. Where you have to go there to reboot the device or change the SIM because it's putting some network in the forbidden list, and you need to physically replace the SIM, will never happen with a Smart SIM. And downtime. Since you can have better availability, there will be less downtime as well, even though in this case, we calculated the same. So to be nice. And it turns out, right, that you can actually lower the cost per each instance of an issue that is arising. And if you actually look into this on the whole fleet of the 200,000, you look into it over the 5 years lifetime, you can actually see that the megabyte price is not the $1. It's $161, or with a Smart SIM, $110. But still, with a Smart SIM, you cut about 1/3 of the cost for traditional IoT roaming SIMs. So focus on measurable ROI metrics. So cut cost, increase revenue, and then there needs to be granulated level under. Understand the real cost of connectivity, not just the megabyte price, but really the real cost behind it. And make sure you minimize downtime, because downtime costs money, it halts your transition, becoming a service provider, and it impacts your brand in a negative way. Jeremy, I think that was actually all from me.
Dan, that's excellent. Thank you very much. You've certainly, well, both of you, given us a lot of food for thought. It's time for questions from the audience, I'm pleased to say, and I see from our dashboard that you've encouraged our attendees to send in a lot of questions. Please keep sending them in. If we can't answer every question now, we will, of course, pass your question on to our speakers afterwards, and they can respond to you offline. But we're now at that stage where we can go to the questions from the audience. We've got just under 10 minutes to get through these, but let's have a look at them. Dan, a question here. A SIM does not have the ability to scan networks. I presume that you mean the SIM steers the modem.
It's a good question. It's very, very relevant. So yes, you're right. It's the modem that does the scan in that sense. SIM is working extremely tight with the modem or with the module as such through SIM toolkit interaction and integration. And the SIM, together with the module, is the module is doing the scan, the SIM is guiding the module of how to do it and what network to choose, obviously, and then to attach to. So it's a valid point. It's a good point.
Yeah. Anything you want to add to that, Michelle?
No, I think Dan's covered it. That's
excellent. So the next question is definitely for Dan. How does the Sierra Wireless Smart SIM fit with EUICC? And perhaps you, for those not so familiar with the abbreviation, you could just elaborate on that, Dan.
Yeah, so EUICC is a technology where you over the air can reprovision the SIM to become a different carrier SIM. So basically, you can take an AT&T SIM, which is loaded on a EUICC SIM platform, and over the air you can reprovision it to become a Verizon SIM, basically. So our SIM obviously supports that. So our intelligent SIM can be loaded on a EUICC SIM. This is something we have. This is something that is available today. Like I said, we want to simplify for our customers. We don't want to lock them in. I've been in this industry for many years. I've seen so many customers ending up being locked to a carrier for 10 years of a lifetime of the device, paying prices that are 10 years old for a megabyte versus what they cost today, and it's just terrible. So flexibility is key for us.
Yeah. I think this next question has been partly answered by some of what you said in the last slides, but in case there's anything you want to elaborate on, it is an important point. The question is, in your customer example, you say Sierra Wireless is cutting the number of support issues by 2/3. How do you achieve this reduction in support issues?
Yeah, so basically this comes back to what I said. If you have an intelligent SIM, an intelligent endpoint, the SIM can mitigate a lot of the issues that you usually have in terms of coverage issues, in terms of data session issues, and those kind of, issues that the customer turn to you as a service provider and say, my device doesn't work. And then you need to figure out and you need to troubleshoot. With a smart SIM, that is being cut massively because all the intelligence is on the SIM to manage those kind of issues.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think you've made that point very well. This is one for you as well, Dan. Could you confirm, please, that in case we have multiple profiles on the Sierra Wireless Smart SIM, then we just pay to Sierra Wireless and not to each network operator where profiles or connectivity will be used?
Yes, so there are multiple ways of doing it. One way is exactly to do what the question is here. So multiple profile on our smart SIM. You pay to Sierra for the services. It's attached to multiple networks and so on and so forth. And for some selected markets, you might want to do a co-branding with the carrier. I don't know, Australia. You might want to do some co-branding with an Australian operator. The same, you can use the same SIM, the same manufacturing process, the same tools, the same APIs to manage your SIMs, but over the air, we can actually reprovision the SIM to become a local SIM in Australia for the carrier that you're doing some co-marketing for. Then if that's the case, obviously it's going to be the local carrier that is providing the connectivity services and is charging for it. So both options are available. A lot of customers, the absolute majority of our connectivity customers, goes for us where we do all that for them. We are the ones that is, how should I say, doing all the magic behind the scene, integrating with the different carriers, making sure to get loaded on our SIM card, and our customer manage all of that through one web portal, one set of APIs, one APN.
Okay, I've got one eye on the time, which is not with us, so we will have to keep this brief. There's probably time for one, maybe two questions, depending on how long the answers are. Dan, one for you again. What protocols does your platform support? The questioner wants to know, could I use your solution as a gateway for LoRa, MQTT, and so on, to capture data from edge devices and push the data to an IBM Bluemix PAAS?
Yes, I should be on mute instead. So yes, our our platform supports all standard protocols. So yes, you can push information from a LoRa device or MQTT protocol to our platform. In our platform, you can decide of what you want to do with the data. You want to put alerts, how do you want to aggregate it in a very basic level, and then flush it downstream to whatever the downstream system is. And that could be IBM Bluemix, that could be SAP HANA, and that could be Microsoft Azure or whatever it is, or just a CRM or an ERP, or you build your apps on top of the data direct. So yes, that can be done.
Okay, now I've just checked with our speakers, and slides will be available afterwards, as has been requested by one of our delegates in Latin America. I'm going to be cheeky here. There's time for one last question if I'm fast. Dan, we have a similar technology to the Smart SIM. Are there any plans to make your application open source?
Yeah, so there are technologies on the market with multi-carriers. So like I said, EICC is one of those more standardized, but you need to manually swap as such. There are other intelligence where you have multi-IMSI capabilities on the card, and depending on where the card, in which country it is, it adapts an identity. So our SIM card, like I said, is a patent solution, so it's a proprietary, so no, it's not going to be open source. But our SIM card application is artificial intelligence in that sense, in terms of that there's no predefined rules of what profile to use where. It's really based on quality of service. If I need to take profile 24 to attach to network 1 because I get best quality of service there, best data resilience, that's what the SIM is going to do. And if it moves a couple of kilometers and it sees, now I'm actually going to have a better capability if I'm utilizing profile number 2 attaching to network B, it's going to change seamlessly.
Thank you. Well, we are out of time. I probably pushed it a little bit, but I'm so glad that we've been able to get as many questions in as we have. And many thanks to all who've taken part. I'd like to remind everyone, please keep an eye on our website. That's at IoT-now.com, IoT-now.com. You can stream this webinar from the site very soon, and meanwhile we've got plenty there to keep you amused in news, blogs and videos. It just remains for me to say a really big thank you to our speakers, who are of course Michelle Mackenzie of Analysys Mason. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you very much, everybody.
And no less, Dan Mortensen of Sierra Wireless. Dan, you've given us a lot of your time and a lot of expertise. It's been great to have your thoughts.
Great to be here, Jeremy. Thank you very much.
And most of all, ladies and gentlemen, I'd really like to thank you for joining us, wherever you are today. Please keep safe, and we really do appreciate the time you've spent with us. From everyone here at IoT Now, we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.